My name is Savannah Blake. I'm 30 years old. Right now, I'm sitting on the edge of a motel bed in Fayetteville, Arkansas, staring at a bag I didn't pack and a bruised version of myself in the mirror. 2 nights ago, I was abandoned on the side of a highway by the only family I had left. Again. But this time it wasn't a tantrum or a mistake. It was planned. The weirdest part, I wasn't surprised. Here's what happened. We were supposed to be camping, a family retreat my stepfather Rick called it. 3 days in the Ozarks, no phones, no distractions, just healing. He said it like it was a sermon. Kylie, my half-sister, acted like it was a joke, filming the whole thing on TikTok, narrating it like some twisted reality show. Back to nature with my loser sister, she captioned one clip. Hilarious. I should have known something was off when they made me ride in the back with the cooler. Or when Mom Darla looked everywhere but at me every time Rick spoke. The man could have said we were sacrificing me to mountain spirits, and she would have nodded like a bobblehead. It was the second afternoon. We stopped at a tiny gas station just past Mountain View. Rick said we needed ice. I went inside to pee. Took maybe 5 minutes. Came back out and the truck was gone. No signal, no wallet. Just me and the gnawing certainty that this was no mistake. At first I circled the lot. Thought maybe they parked on the other side. Maybe Kylie saw something she needed for her brand. But when I found a folded piece of paper under the windshield wiper of a parked truck near the bench, my stomach sank. My name was on it. Savannah underlined twice. It said, "Time to find your way back. Let's see if you're any better at it now." No signature, but I knew Rick's handwriting. Blocky, hard-edged, like everything else about him. I sat down right there on the bench and just stared at the sky. It was so blue it hurt. That stupid kind of pretty that makes ugly things worse. Part of me hoped it was a test, some sadistic family bonding exercise, that they'd circle back in an hour and laugh like it was funny. We were just kidding, come on now. But the hour passed, then another. The sun shifted, and I knew this wasn't a joke. This was the moment they finally made literal what they'd been doing my whole life, leaving me behind. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always find comfort in knowing someone's awake out there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. My mother always said we were a perfect family. Temple, Texas's very own Brady Bunch, only more spiritual. Rick ran a landscaping supply business. Darla taught meditation classes out of our sunroom. Kylie was the star bright smile ring light, hundreds of thousands of followers. And me, I was the one that didn't fit the filter. They had a whole mythology for me. Sensitive, difficult, unhealed. It's funny how a story becomes gospel just because it's repeated by people who talk the loudest. I believed them for a while. I played my part. Quiet, helpful, invisible. The good girl who didn't ask for anything because anything I wanted was somehow selfish. But that note, the one on the windshield, it changed everything. It wasn't just cruel, it was confirmation. They were never going to let me belong. You ever try to hold your breath during an argument just to make yourself invisible? I used to do that when I was little, standing at the edge of the hallway in our 2-story house in Temple, Texas, hoping that if I made myself small enough, they'd forget I existed until the storm passed. Rick's voice was thunder even when he wasn't yelling, especially when he wasn't yelling. His discipline came in cold stares and impossible standards. Don't cry unless something's broken, he'd say. And if it is, fix it. Darla called it tough love. I used to think love was supposed to feel like glass pretty, but sharp if you touched it wrong. Darla was a whole performance, floating through the house in silk robes and barefoot philosophies, claiming the universe had a plan for us. Rick brings structure, she'd say. I bring light. But when Rick barked, she dimmed fast. And when I needed help, she always had a headache or a spiritual download to attend to. She didn't scream. That wasn't her way. Instead, she sighed a deep, wounded exhale that made it feel like your existence had knocked the world out of balance. You're upsetting the energy of the home, she'd whisper, like it was some sacred truth and not a cop-out. I was 12 when she stopped calling me her daughter and started calling me the other one. It wasn't cruel. It was just casual, like I was a misplaced thing in her curated life. Kylie, on the other hand, got serenades. Literal ones Darla would hum to her while braiding her hair, whispering affirmations, and kissing her forehead like she was some sacred thing. Rick adored Kylie too, called her his brand ambassador. She sold his mulch like it was perfume. Green living with Kylie Blake, half landscaping, half lifestyle content, all fake. She did one video where she pointed at me in the background, scrubbing a cooler, and captioned it, "Family support staff on point." Got 40,000 likes. I didn't even know I was in the shot until someone at my job mentioned it. "You look so serious," they said. Cheer up, I quit a week later. But the worst part wasn't the public humiliation. It was how Darla responded. Kylie's expressing herself, she said, spooning flaxseed into her smoothie. "Don't be jealous of her light Savannah." I stood there holding the phone, with the video paused on my hunched shoulders. That's when something cracked. Not all at once, just a hairline fracture behind the eyes. That fracture grew each time Rick corrected my tone. Each time Darla said I was choosing victimhood. Each time Kylie pretended to forget I existed unless she needed someone to hold her camera. But I didn't leave. You don't just walk away from a family you've been trained to protect. I told myself I was the glue, the fixer, the one who made the house run. If I left, the illusion might collapse. And I wasn't sure I'd survive that kind of guilt. So I stayed. I made dinners, paid bills, smiled at neighbors, took their absence of affection as a challenge, like if I could just be more useful, more calm, more spiritual, maybe they'd love me back into existence. I was still holding that dream when they planned the camping trip. I didn't want to go. My stomach said no before my mouth could. But Darla pressed her hand to her heart and said, "This will be healing for us." Rick nodded like it was scripture. Kylie posted a boomerang of her new hiking boots with the caption, "God help me." So I packed my bag and folded myself into the shape they needed me to be. Kylie made the woods look glamorous, like suffering in $300 athleisure was some kind of spiritual awakening. She propped her phone up on a tripod while I hauled gear through the gravel. Wilderness vibes with the fam, she chirped, fake giggle echoing through the trees. Behind her, I tripped over a root. She didn't even blink. She had this way of talking to the camera, like it was a mirror that only showed the good parts. "My sister's kind of a recluse," she said once midstream. "But we love her. She's like feral, but in a cute way." The comments rolled in like poison dipped in emojis. I never watched the whole clips, just the pieces that hurt enough to confirm what I already knew. I was a brand accessory, the backdrop to her evolution arc. Rick loved the attention. He called Kylie his gold mine. Every view was validation. "You should take notes," he told me once. Kylie knows how to sell a narrative. My narrative, apparently. She used to be sweet. When we were kids, Kylie used to slip me notes under my door. Stick figure drawings of us in matching dresses, holding hands. "Best sisters." She wrote once in shaky handwriting, followed by a crayon heart. I kept that one taped under my desk for years, like proof it hadn't always been cruel. But something changed when the ring light came out. Attention rewired her. She fed off it. If I cried, it was content. If I winced, it was material. The first night at camp, I was cooking chili over the fire, while she filmed me from behind. "Look at my forest chef," she joked. "A 5-star meal of beans and trauma." I turned around and muttered, "Could you not?" Just those 3 words, soft, low. But Rick heard. Spoon halfway to his mouth, he locked eyes with me and said, "This trip is to test our strength, Savannah. Some will rise. Some—" He trailed off with a smirk, like he already knew I'd fail. Darla said nothing. She looked at the fire like it held answers. That night, I lay in the tent alone, listening to the rustle of Kylie's laughter in the next one over. I stared at the nylon ceiling, wondering how it always ended like this, me carrying the weight, them filming the joke. The next day, the air smelled like pine and coming rain. Rick handed me a flashlight after dinner and told me to go collect wood from a clearing about 15 minutes back. "Take your time," he said. "Be useful." I hesitated. Kylie glanced up from her phone and smiled slow and small. "You got this, sis," she said. It sounded like a dare. I went. Of course I did. I always did what they asked. I walked into the tree's flashlight, stuttering against the trunks. The clearing wasn't far, but my chest felt tight the whole way, like the woods knew something I didn't. I gathered wood with shaking hands, trying to ignore the whispers of wind that sounded like breath. When I finally turned back, I told myself they'd still be by the fire waiting. Maybe Rick would nod approval. Maybe Darla would finally thank me. But the campsite was gone. Not just the people. Everything. The tents, the chairs, the cooler, the truck. And in the center of the empty fire pit, on top of a flat rock, sat a folded note in Kylie's handwriting. Let's see if she makes it viral. I didn't move at first. Just stood there, flashlight shaking in my hand, staring at that smug little line inked on crumpled paper. Let's see if she makes it viral. Like my panic was the punchline. Like abandonment could trend. I picked up the note. Her handwriting looped and sharp like it had always been. There was a doodle underneath a sad face with X's for eyes. I sat on the cold ground, numb, holding the firewood I'd gathered like some dumb offering to a god that never asked for it. The forest around me didn't care. The trees didn't flinch. The stars blinked like they were watching a rerun. My stomach rolled with something I couldn't name. I wasn't shocked, not exactly. More like hollowed out. Like they'd finally scooped out the last bit of me that held hope. For a while I didn't cry. I just listened to the wind, to my heartbeat, to the memory of Rick's voice saying I was too emotional, too dramatic, too much. Then I remembered my phone. Of course it was in my backpack, my safety bag, which had apparently gone with them. I had nothing. No ID. No wallet. No water. Just the clothes I wore and a flashlight slowly dying. I waited. Maybe this was still a prank. Maybe they'd drive back with a camera and say, "Gotcha." Kylie would cackle, Darla would say it was a lesson in resilience, and Rick would tell me to laugh a little. But no one came. An hour passed. Then another. My body started to shake, not from fear, but from cold. I curled into myself, pulled my sleeves down over my hands, and rested my back against a tree. Every sound became a threat. Every gust of wind was a predator I couldn't see. At some point, I dozed off from sheer exhaustion. I woke up shivering, the moon hanging overhead like a spotlight in a courtroom. By dawn, my mouth was dry and my feet were numb. I told myself to stand. I don't even remember deciding. I just did. I walked. I followed the dirt path back the way I'd come, hoping I remembered it right. Every branch looked the same. Every root a tripwire. By some miracle, or maybe just pure survival instinct, I found the road again. A cracked stretch of asphalt cutting through the wilderness like an old scar. I stood there with my thumb out, feeling like a child, pretending to be brave. 3 cars passed. The fourth, a mud-splattered pickup, slowed. The window rolled down. A man in his 60s, leaned out face, weathered eyes kind. "You all right, miss?" he asked. I nodded, then shook my head. "I need to get to a town. Any town." He didn't ask anything else, just unlocked the door. "Name's Ed," he said as I climbed in. "Hope you like country radio." We rode in silence, broken only by the static warble of old ballads and the low hum of tires. He dropped me at a gas station just outside a place called Heber Springs. I thanked him. He handed me a bottled water and a $20 bill. "You take care now," he said. Then he was gone. Inside, the air was stale with popcorn oil and dust. I borrowed the clerk's phone. Hands shaking, I typed in the number I knew by heart, Darla's. But I didn't hit call. I didn't want her voice. Instead, I glanced up at the mounted TV. The news was on. The caption read, "Local man reports adult daughter missing in the Ozarks. Family concerned for mental health." And just like that, they rewrote the story. They hadn't left me. I had wandered off. The moment I saw that news caption, something inside me unhooked. I wasn't just angry, I was annihilated. They weren't satisfied with disappearing me from the campsite. Now they wanted to erase my version of events completely, replace it with something digestible, a girl gone missing, a fragile mind. Poor Savannah. I walked out of the gas station into the morning light, holding my breath like it might hold me together. The parking lot smelled like hot asphalt and old cigarettes. I found a spot on the curb and sat down staring at my hands like they belonged to someone else. They were scratched, dirt-caked, trembling. I looked like someone who'd wandered out of the woods, which I guess I had. The clerk came out once to offer me a granola bar. I said thank you and took it, but I didn't eat it right away. I was too busy watching the road, waiting for something. Anything. And then I remembered another number. One I hadn't dialed in over a decade. June Carmichael. My mother's sister. The one we weren't supposed to talk about. the black sheep who left Temple after calling Rick a walking red flag with a landscaping business. I hadn't heard her name since I was 15. But suddenly, her number, dusty and buried in my memory, came to the surface like a lifeline. I called. The line rang twice before someone answered. "Hello," the voice was slow, cautious. I swallowed. It's Savannah." There was a pause. Then a shift in her tone like she'd stood up straighter. "Where are you?" I gave her the name of the gas station. I could hear her scribbling something. "Don't move," she said. "I'm coming. No questions. You hear me?" "You're not theirs anymore." She hung up before I could reply. It took her 4 hours. I didn't move. I just sat there watching ants crawl over a crack in the pavement, letting the words repeat in my head like a chant. "You're not theirs anymore." Xiao. When the old Subaru pulled up, I recognized her before she even stepped out. Same wild gray hair, same weathered jeans, same heavy boots. Her eyes were soft but steady, like she was used to seeing things people didn't want to say out loud. She didn't hug me, didn't offer any platitudes. She just opened the passenger door and said, "You hungry?" I nodded. We drove in silence. No radio, no awkward questions. Just the road and the weight of my breath slowly returning to me. I didn't realize how loud my life had been until we hit that stretch of road where silence didn't feel dangerous anymore. Her place was a small house outside Fayetteville, white paint-peeling porch, crooked wind chimes made of rusted spoons. She called it the escape pod. Inside it smelled like cedar and chamomile, and something burnt she probably forgot in the oven. There was a couch, a blanket, a steaming mug of something herbal. "The bathroom's down the hall," she said. "If the pipe's groan, don't panic. That's just Harold the ghost." I laughed. It came out dry brittle. But it was real. First one in days. I slept on that couch like it had arms. Woke up to the smell of eggs and coffee, and a cat sitting on my chest like it had declared ownership. June didn't push. She didn't ask for the story. She just handed me a slice of toast and said, "You're safe now. You're not crazy. And you're not broken." I nodded, but I didn't believe her. Not yet. Still, the silence felt like a kind of rescue. A kind I never knew I needed. It took me 3 days to open the attic door. June had mentioned it offhand, stirring a pot of soup, like it wasn't a loaded confession. "There's a box up there," she said, marked L. Blake. "Found it years ago after your mom stopped answering my letters. Couldn't bring myself to toss it. Might be yours." I told her I'd look when I was ready. That was a lie. I didn't want anything from Darla's past. Nothing that smelled like regret or spiritual bypassing. But curiosity doesn't take no for an answer forever. On the 3rd night, I climbed the ladder, flashlight in hand. The attic smelled like mothballs and pine. Dust shimmered in the beam of light, like secrets suspended mid-air. The box was exactly where she said it'd be. A shoebox duct-taped at the corners, labeled L. Blake, return to sender. The handwriting was soft, slanted, careful. Not Darla's. Definitely not Rick's. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, surrounded by forgotten picture frames and an old broken fan, and pulled off the lid. Letters. Dozens of them. Some yellowed with time, others crisp and unopened. Each one addressed to me, Savannah Blake. They started after my dad died. My real dad. The one no one talked about. Liam Blake. I was 7 when he passed. Rick moved in a year later, like a shadow that never left. The first letter was dated 6 months after Liam's funeral. It started "My dearest girl," and ended with a poem about stars being messengers. There were little doodles in the corners, sunflowers, music notes, a crooked heart with Leia written beneath it. My grandmother, I'd been told she died when I was 10. But these letters, they kept coming until I turned 17. All those years. She'd been writing, and someone, Darla, had been intercepting, reading, tossing them into boxes like inconvenient memories. There were pressed flowers in some envelopes, sketches, jokes. She wrote about books I'd love, about my dad's laugh, about how he used to hum off key in the kitchen while scrambling eggs. Things I'd forgotten. Things Darla had no right to erase. One letter stopped me cold. It said, "Liam set up a small trust for you, Savannah. Just in case. He wanted you to have options to study art to leave if you needed. I hope you find this before they spend it." My hands went cold. A trust no one had ever mentioned a trust. I read that line over and over, like it might rearrange itself. But it didn't. I folded the letter, tucked it into the inside pocket of my hoodie, and climbed down the attic stairs. June was in the kitchen, reading a gardening magazine. She didn't look up. "You found them," she said. I nodded. She closed the magazine, slow and deliberate. "Your mother cut everyone off, said you were too impressionable, changed your number, told folks you didn't want contact. By the time I realized what was happening, you were already gone." I sat down across from her. The chair creaked under me. "Why didn't anyone come for me?" She met my eyes. "Because people like Rick make it hard to see what's true. And people like Darla, they rewrite truth until even they believe it." That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up at June's kitchen table, rereading the letter about the trust, tracing my father's name with my finger, wondering if any of my life had ever really belonged to me, or if I'd just been surviving inside someone else's idea of who I was supposed to be. In the morning, I emailed the bank listed in the letter. Just 2 lines. Nectots subject inheritance inquiry. "Hello. I believe there was a trust in my name, Savannah Blake, established by Liam Blake. Can you confirm?" I hit send. My hands were shaking. But for the first time in a long time, it wasn't from fear. The bank responded 2 days later. The email was brief, professional, and devastating. "Dear Ms. Blake, records show the trust was restructured in 2009 under legal guardianship directives. Disbursements were made through authorized representatives, Rick and Darla Blake. The account is now closed. We regret any confusion." I didn't scream, didn't throw the chair. Just sat very still, staring at the words like they were written in ash. They'd spent it. Whatever my father left me, his gift, his protection, his proof that someone had planned for me, they spent it. On what mulch trucks, Kylie's braces, organic paint for Darla's Aura workshops. I closed the laptop and pressed my forehead against the table. When June walked in, she took one look at me and said, "They took it." I nodded. She didn't try to make it better. She just slid a mug of tea beside me and sat down. That was her gift presence without pressure. That and being stubborn as hell in the best way. The next day, she taped a handwritten list to the fridge, local jobs. Savannah. Co-op clerk, library aide, auto garage assistant. She'd written a smiley face next to Kane's auto like it was an inside joke. "Marcus is good people," she said. "Hires folks who need a clean slate. Just say my name." I did. Kane's auto was a low building with cracked windows and an old vending machine that ate your quarters half the time. Marcus was in his mid-30s, grease on his shirt, eyes like quiet rivers. He barely looked up when I walked in. "You June's niece?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yes." "You know anything about cars?" "No." "You know how to follow instructions and not cry when someone yells torque or wrench?" I blinked. "Yes." He handed me a broom. "Start with the floor. Pays $12 an hour. Cash until we get you on the books. Don't steal the socket sets." That was it. My first real job in years that didn't involve keeping Kylie's ring light charged or scrubbing spiritual toxins out of the kitchen sink. I swept floors, sorted screws. Eventually, Marcus let me stock shelves, then shadow oil changes. I liked the work. It made sense. Things were either broken or they weren't. You didn't need to justify your existence every 5 minutes. He called me Blake, said it like it was a name that meant something. Somewhere between oil pans and tire rotations, he brought me coffee in a thermos. Not Starbucks, just plain gas station brew with my name written in Sharpie Sieve. 2 sugars. I didn't know what to do with that kindness. It wasn't romantic. It was something rarer, undemanding. At night, I took an online accounting course. Numbers had always made sense to me. They were like stories with no lies. I used Marcus's old laptop, balancing it on a stack of auto manuals in June's kitchen. One night, I updated an invoice for Kane's and spotted a billing error. 2 line items for the same part. I brought it to Marcus. He stared at it, then said, "How'd you catch that?" "I don't know, I just saw it." "You want to take over the books." And just like that, I went from sweeping bolts off the floor to managing payroll. For the first time, I wasn't surviving, I was building. Every receipt I filed, every brake pad I inventoried, felt like laying brick over rubble. And Marcus, he never asked what happened to me. But once after closing up, he looked at me and said, "Some people are built like engines. You take them apart, they come back stronger." And I thought maybe I wasn't a cautionary tale. Maybe I was a rebuild. It was late on a Thursday when my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something in my chest said answer. Hello? A pause. Then a voice I didn't expect, gravelly, low, and hesitant. Savannah? It's Elijah. Rick's son. My whole body stiffened. I barely remembered Elijah. He'd been 17 when he vanished. Just packed up and disappeared one day. Rick said he stole tools from the shed and ran off. That he was trouble. I believed it. I was 13. I believed everything they told me. I know what he did to you, Elijah said quietly. And I know what he did to me. I didn't say anything, just let the silence stretch until he spoke again. You got time to meet. We agreed to a diner near the highway neutral ground. I wore the only clean blouse I had and sat in a vinyl booth that smelled like bacon and wet paper. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Older beard, scruff eyes, sharp with something that had been tempered by years of walking on glass. He nodded, slid into the booth across from me, and set a manila folder between us. He said I stole a carburetor, kicked me out. But the truth, I found something I wasn't supposed to. He opened the folder. Bank statements, signatures, paper trails. The Harper Family Trust restructured when I was 12. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Company expenses labeled as Savannah tuition and youth enrichment, but they were all dated during years I wasn't even enrolled in school. He funneled the money through the business, Elijah said. Used your name to make it look clean. I ran my finger along one document. My name was there, typed neatly at the top of a form I'd never signed. Underneath it, Rick's signature. This is fraud, I whispered. Elijah nodded. Yep. And the trust was supposed to be yours at 18. But he filed guardianship extensions, said you were emotionally compromised. Got Darla to co-sign. The phrase sliced into me like a cold blade. Emotionally compromised. That's what they told people when I cried. That I was unstable, dramatic, that I needed guidance, and they used it to take everything. I looked up at Elijah. Why are you bringing this to me now? He blinked slow. Because I saw your face on the news. That whole missing in the Ozarks bit. I figured if they'd lie like that, maybe you didn't know how deep it went. I leaned back in the booth, staring at the ceiling tiles. Some were stained, one was cracked. The kind of thing no one notices unless they're already used to spotting damage. I thought I was alone, I said quietly. You're not, he said. Just one of the quiet ones, like me. He pushed the folder toward me. Keep it. Do what you want with it. But don't let him rewrite your story again. That night, I spread the documents across June's kitchen table. Letters from my dad. Bank records. Kylie's livestream screenshots. The whole ugly skeleton of our perfect family splayed out in neat little piles. I labeled folders, made copies, loaded everything onto a flash drive. Then I sat down and wrote a letter of my own to me. Dear Savannah, you are not what they said. You are not what they stole. You are the proof that quiet doesn't mean weak, that soft doesn't mean broken, that silence chosen is power. I folded it and tucked it next to my dad's last letter. Not for revenge, not yet, but for when the reckoning came. I picked the diner in Texarkana on purpose, halfway between Fayetteville and Temple Neutral Ground, with cracked leather booths and coffee that tasted like boiled bark. June offered to come with me. I said yes, but she sat a few tables down, back to us, nursing a cup of tea like she belonged there. That was her way, showing up without hovering. I had the folder in my bag. Not to wave around, just to hold like armor. My fingers kept brushing the corner of it while I waited. I wasn't scared. I was steady in a way I didn't recognize. They showed up late, of course. Rick in his dealership blazer like he was selling redemption. Darla in a silk scarf too warm for the weather. Kylie with oversized sunglasses and a phone she couldn't stop touching even in disgrace. I didn't stand, just looked up. You asked to meet, so talk. Rick didn't miss a beat. We're in a difficult position, he said like he was launching into a PowerPoint. There's a legal situation involving Kylie's brand and... It's a crypto lawsuit, Kylie interrupted, huffing. Some people don't understand satire. Darla laid a hand on Kylie's knee, her face a portrait of delicate concern. She's being scapegoated, Savannah. You know what that feels like. My stomach flipped. The audacity, the calculated reach. You used my name, I said flatly, to make it look like we were a united family business. Silence, just for a breath. Then Rick said, we were desperate, The trust. Was stolen, I cut in. He froze. I leaned forward. Every penny. I have the records. The forged guardianship forms. The disbursements for trucks, not tuition. You embezzled from your dead stepson's daughter. Darla started crying. The silent, kind tears slipping past perfectly done makeup. We did what we thought was best. Kylie scoffed. This is so dramatic. You were always so sensitive. You think this makes you the hero? Before I could answer, a voice cut in behind me. No, but it makes you the villain. We all turned. Elijah stepped into the booth, shadow hands in his pockets, gaze locked on Rick. Tell them the truth. You threatened to disown me when I wouldn't lie on a form. You said Savannah was a liability, not worth the investment. Rick stood up, face red. You don't belong here. Neither do you, I said. I reached into my bag and slid a small envelope across the table. Rick opened it. Inside was a check for $18.75. Bus fare from Mountain View to Heber Springs, I said. That's what you're worth to me now. His mouth opened, closed. No words, just rage and humiliation poorly disguised. Darla whispered, Savannah, we're still your family. I stood. No, you're the story I outgrew. Kylie stayed seated silent, now her jaw tight. She looked at me with something like fear, but not of me, of what I knew. June met my eyes as I passed her table. She stood, slid her tea to the side, and followed. Outside, the air was thick with the promise of rain. Our truck was waiting at the curb. Marcus leaned against it, arms crossed, watching like he'd been ready the whole time. You good? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, they thought I'd beg. They still don't get it. June smiled softly. They don't have to. We drove away without looking back. And for once, I didn't feel like I left anything behind worth missing. A year passed before I went back to the woods. Not out of nostalgia, not to reopen wounds, just to see it from the other side. The place they left me and the person who walked out. The Mustang rattled a little as Marcus pulled it off the narrow road. We'd restored it over the winter turquoise, with one rusted door we never painted over, like a scar we decided to keep. He looked at me. You sure? I nodded. I don't need closure, just perspective. The clearing had changed. The old fire pit was gone, scattered stones, half covered in grass. No tents, no folding chairs, no note mocking me. Just sky and trees and wind that didn't whisper threats anymore. I stepped out barefoot, feeling the pine needles poke the soles of my feet. From my pocket, I pulled the dried bouquet lavender eucalyptus petals saved from the day Marcus and I got married on a cliff near the coast, with June officiating and Elijah filming on his beat-up iPhone. Kendra mailed us a lemon cake. Kylie wasn't invited. I knelt and scattered the petals in the center of the clearing. No speeches, no ceremony, just letting go. When I stood, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. Like something that had long been cracked was now a healed seam. We drove home in silence, and I watched the trees blur into memory. That evening, I stepped into my shed, the one we'd converted into an art studio, with shelves lined with graphite sticks, charcoal dust, and folded letters from a grandmother who never stopped writing. I opened my sketchbook, drew the clearing, this time not empty. This time, I added myself sitting in the grass petals, in hand, hair loose, eyes open. Above the page, I wrote, not the girl who got left behind, the woman who kept walking. Months later, that drawing hung in a seaside gallery. Next to portraits of Marcus at work, June's herb garden, Elijah rebuilding carburetors. A small brass plate beneath it read, Savannah Blake, founder the Blake Rebuild Fund. The fund was real, small, quiet, and steady. We offered scholarships to women with nothing but grit, girls kicked out, cut off, cast aside. Our motto, not about revenge, about forward. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Kylie, I know I messed up. I was young. I didn't mean to hurt you. Mom's not doing well. I wish we could go back. Please write back. I didn't respond. But I didn't burn it either. I slipped it into a folder marked Ghosts next to old bank statements and the last drawing I ever did of Rick. That one I tore in half. A week later, another package came. Inside was my childhood sketchbook, the one Kylie ruined years ago. Now the pages were flattened, laminated, preserved. One drawing had survived untouched, my father, smiling at a piano brush in hand. No note, no explanation. Maybe it was Kylie, maybe it was June, Maybe the universe making one small amends. I framed it and hung it by the window, where the sea light spilled through in the morning. I still hear the wind sometimes, still feel the hum of old hurts. But they don't own me now. They thought it would be funny to leave me behind. They didn't know they'd set me free. Some people wait their whole lives for closure. I learned that sometimes you give it to yourself. You don't need their apology, their tears, or their version of the story. You need your truth, your voice, your name spoken aloud, even if it cracks. Especially if it cracks. Have you ever been left behind by the people who were supposed to hold you? Tell me in the comments. I read every story, I carry them with me. If this journey meant something to you, like the video, share it. Subscribe if you want more stories about reclaiming your power when the world tries to silence it. Because the world needs more voices like yours. Thank you for listening.